While preparing breakfast, I suddenly felt a strange sharp pain in my left chest. At first, I thought it was muscle pain, maybe from carrying heavy things the day before. But it didn't ease. Instead, the sensation tightened like an invisible hand squeezing my heart. I tried to keep standing, telling myself to stay calm. But moments later, everything went dark. I remember the sound of a falling plate crashing on the floor, then everything went silent. My name is Martha Louise Henderson. I am 76 years old, born and raised in a small rural town in Missouri, where golden wheat fields and the autumn blue sky have surrounded my childhood memories. I have lived a full life, experiencing the vibrant summers of the 1950s, watching my children grow up, and becoming a grandmother to 6 lovely grandchildren. I thought I had seen all the surprises life could bring. But life still has its way to shock us, even when your hair has turned white and your hands tremble. That morning, I woke just like any other ordinary day. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, shining on the family portrait hanging on my bedroom wall. I heard the birds singing outside in the backyard, a familiar sound for 76 years. I prepared myself a cup of black coffee, sat by the window, and gazed at the small garden with bright tulips that John, my husband, and I had tended for over 40 years. John passed away 8 years ago, but I have kept everything as if he were still there, just a glance away. I turned on the radio, listening to familiar country songs, then began my day. While preparing breakfast, I suddenly felt a strange sharp pain in my left chest. At first, I thought it was muscle pain, maybe from carrying heavy things the day before. But it didn't ease. Instead, the sensation tightened like an invisible hand squeezing my heart. I tried to keep standing, telling myself to stay calm. But moments later, everything went dark. I remember the sound of a falling plate crashing on the floor, then everything went silent. I have no idea how long I was unconscious. The next thing I sensed was the blaring sound of ambulance sirens and flashing red lights on the kitchen ceiling, where I usually sit knitting for my grandchildren. At that moment, a single thought came to my mind: Dear Lord, I am not ready to leave them yet, not yet. I will never forget the feeling the first time I woke up. All my senses seemed shrouded in a thick fog. I heard the clicking of machines somewhere, the smell of antiseptic mixed with bright white light flooding the room. I realized I was lying on a hospital bed, my right hand attached to many 4 tubes, a white bandage across my chest, and a plastic band on my wrist, my name, ID number, and date of birth. The ceiling light was glaring, and through the window was a new day dawning, though my eyes still stung. The first face I saw was Becca, my youngest daughter. She sat by my bedside, her blonde hair tangled, eyes red behind her glasses. "Mom, can you hear me?" Her voice trembled. I tried to smile, though my lips were dry and stiff as if they didn't belong to me. "Yes, Mom's here, don't cry, Mom's still here." My voice was hoarse and weak. The room was suddenly full of sobs. Becca leaned in, holding my hand, the warmth trembling in her fingers against my aged, wrinkled skin. After a while, Dr. Gibson entered. He was a man in his 50s, with thick mustache and deep hazel eyes that always conveyed hope to patients. He checked my vital signs and gently said, "Mrs. Henderson, you were extremely lucky. You had a cardiac arrest for about 2 minutes before the rescue team arrived and performed CPR, delivering 2 shocks. Your survival is a miracle." I looked at Becca, then at my trembling hand. Between life and death, I had crossed over and returned. Though it was a miracle, fear still lingered in my heart. The doctor explained I had just suffered an acute myocardial infarction, a heart attack. The words were familiar from TV warnings, friends' cautions, but I never imagined it would knock on my door so unexpectedly. That first night in the hospital, I couldn't sleep. The constant beep of heart monitors and breathing machines echoed beside me. Every time I closed my eyes, I remembered the crushing chest pain and the faint light and darkness I had passed through. I was so close to a shadowed place no one knows in advance what awaits. As the city quieted, I lay silent on the bed, recalling a lifetime, childhood fields of Missouri, warm dinners with parents and siblings, meeting John at spring fair, his gentle eyes, the shy proposal, the years we faced life's challenges. I remembered John caring for me during my first winter flu, every smile of Emily, Ben's kiss the day he left for the army. I wondered if I didn't wake up today, who would care for the old cats outside, who would tell bedtime stories on Saturday nights, who would pass on the love for the flowers in this garden. Tears ran down my cheeks, not from fear of death, but because I had not done enough, not told Becca how much I loved her, not taught the grandchildren how to roast corn like my grandmother did, not written down the secret pumpkin pie recipes I had collected for years. The next morning, I saw Emily holding a bouquet of wild daisies, smiling brightly. Sam asked where Grandma is, Mom. Today's Monday. Grandma usually picks him up. Little things like these made me realize maybe God had granted me more time to say what I had never said, to do the things I had never done in so many years. When the doctor told me I needed surgery to put in a stent, a tiny tube to keep the coronary artery open, I silently nodded. I didn't want to give up this second chance because of fear or weakness. I had seen many elderly friends pass peacefully, leaving sorrow behind. But this time, I knew I chose to live, fully, even if the days left were few. I never thought I would undergo heart surgery at my age. At 76, my plans were simple: visit the local farm store, cook dinner for the family, then sit on the rocking chair by the window knitting while listening to the rain. But life, somehow, threw me the greatest challenge. That surgery day, I was taken into a cold operating room, surrounded by doctors and nurses in green gowns. I thought of John. If he were alive, he would hold my hand and whisper encouragement like he did when Becca was born. But now, I had only myself, memories as my companion, and faith in God and those who saved me. Lying on the table, I heard my heart beat, weakly, but still there. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, Martha, you have overcome many storms. Your daughters, grandchildren, and your garden are waiting. You will come back. The operation was a success. When I woke, a dull pain lingered in my chest, but for the first time, I could breathe deeply without the weight I had felt before. In the days that followed, I stayed in the hospital for monitoring and recovery. Every morning, Becca or Emily would visit, always bringing messages from the grandchildren, awkwardly made butter cookies from Sam, and crayon drawings. Get well soon, Grandma. Every time I read them, I had to fight back tears. At the hospital, I met many elderly people like myself, many weaker, some struggling to walk, others lying silently with fear in their eyes. In the corridor, I befriended Jessie, 2 years older than me, who had just had a valve replacement. We often chatted while practicing walking around the corridor, each pushing a walker, laughing and sharing old stories. Martha, why do you think we survived? Jessie asked me one day. I thought for a long time before answering. Because I still have many things to love and many things I want to do. And I think God wants me to teach my grandchildren a few more years. Jessie laughed. We talked about the simple things that only at this age we truly appreciate: a baked apple pie on a cold winter day, the feeling of a grandchild's tiny hand holding our aging fingers, the sweetness of honey tea, and the smell of soil after summer rain. Each day, I was guided through cardiac rehabilitation. At first, my limbs were weak, just standing up made me dizzy. But the nurses were patient, encouraging me to breathe deeply, step by step. I remember the first time I took 10 steps down the corridor, I was so moved I cried. "Mrs. Martha, you're winning," the young nurse named Linda said, and I felt a small spark of pride ignite within me. During the long nights in the hospital, I missed home terribly. Missed my garden, each tulip, the chirping of sparrows every morning. But I reminded myself to be patient, to recover bit by bit so I could return. One rainy morning, Emily brought me a small mailbox, filled with handwritten letters from my grandchildren, friends from church, and even the neighbor I had helped pick berries for last year. "Grandma, when you come back, will you teach me to make apple pie? Mother Martha, we're all praying for your recovery. Please come to little Grace's birthday. Grandma, let's plant sunflowers together next season." I read each letter, feeling the longing and love they had for me. And at that moment, I realized I wasn't alone in this battle. I had family, friends, neighbors, people willing to pray and wait for my return. I became more determined than ever. I practiced walking farther each day, tried to finish meals despite poor appetite, followed every instruction from the doctor. Because I wasn't living just for myself, but for those I loved. With each passing day, I felt more clearly the miraculous strength of the heart. It wasn't just a muscle pumping blood, but a connection of love, memories, and hope. The day I was discharged, I cried like a child. Becca hugged me and whispered, "Mom, you are the strongest person in the world." I knew a long journey lay ahead, but I was no longer afraid. I had returned from the brink of death, and this time, I would truly live, fully, gratefully, and lovingly. I thought returning home after a heart attack and surgery would be a gentle conclusion to my journey, that I could go back to my rocking chair, gaze at the garden, and wait for the sunset to fall over Missouri. But I was wrong. Being discharged was just the beginning of another challenge, the challenge of recovery days that were both patient and harsh. On my first day home, I received a hospital guidance booklet: what to do, what to eat, how to exercise, what to avoid. The doctor had even prepared a cardiac rehabilitation plan for me, a program I had never heard of before. They said, "Mrs. Martha, recovery after a heart attack isn't just about resting anymore. Now, appropriate physical activity is the key to regaining both physical and mental strength." That first morning, I stood by the window looking out at the garden. The tulips John had planted years ago were still blooming as if nothing had happened. Strangely, I found myself anxious about walking around the garden, as if preparing to climb a mountain. Becca, my youngest daughter, became my coach. She wouldn't let me carry anything heavy, always asking, "Mom, how many laps around the house do you want to walk today?" At first, everything felt awkward. Each step required a pause to breathe, my heart pounded, and my limbs felt heavy. Once, I only managed to walk for exactly 3 minutes before needing to sit down. That feeling of weakness made me desperate. But I wasn't alone. Becca was always there, cheering, telling funny stories, and helping me believe, today it's 3 minutes, tomorrow will be 4, then 6, then a lap around the garden. And so, I progressed bit by bit. After a week, I could walk for 10 minutes, a small achievement that made the whole family as happy as if I had won a marathon. Each morning, I wore my stopwatch, checked my blood pressure, and began my own journey under the trees, breathing in the smell of fresh grass and the moisture of Missouri spring. Along with exercise, I had to learn to adjust my diet. The doctor advised reducing salt, eating more vegetables, fish, replacing animal fat with vegetable oil, and most importantly, splitting meals into smaller portions. Even my favorite bacon was strictly forbidden on the list. I chuckled to Emily, this old lady has to learn to eat like a rabbit, but as long as I'm alive to see the grandchildren grow up, that's fine. At first, I thought changing eating habits would be the hardest. But it turned out, the harder part was changing my mindset. I had to learn to be optimistic, stop thinking about negative things, stop fearing when my heart suddenly beat faster or my mind worried as night fell. The doctor advised, psychological strength can be the best medicine for the heart. I started practicing relaxation, meditation, and listening to country music each evening to soothe the anxiety within. After a month, I could walk around my small garden twice without needing to rest. I became more confident with my new pace of life, though still cautious when doing anything slightly strenuous. Sometimes I still worried when I felt a slight twinge in my chest, but now, I knew how to stay calm, sit down, breathe deeply, and remind myself everything will be okay. On some afternoons, I'd sit on the porch knitting, listening to the children laughing outside, my heart filled with gratitude. Never had I so clearly understood the value of every breath, every birdsong, every hug from a grandchild, and every sunset at day's end. Friends from church often stopped by, bringing flowers, cookies, and simple stories. They encouraged me, sharing tales of others who had overcome serious illness and were still living happily. We'd pray together, thankful for every peaceful day granted to us. I also became a small inspiration to the elderly neighbors. Each time I walked, I'd chat with them, share my recovery experiences, encourage them to exercise, eat healthily, and keep a positive spirit. I realized I had changed, not just for myself but for those around me. At night, I wrote in my journal, recording each step of my recovery, every fear I overcame, every small joy in this journey. Looking back at these notes, I cherished even more the second chance life had given me. Recovering after a heart attack was not just about healing the body, but also the soul, a true rebirth, where every day alive is a gift, a miraculous blessing. As the third month after the heart attack passed, I started wondering what I would do with the rest of my days. I had lived for 76 years, had seen so many ups and downs, from the Vietnam War years when Ben joined the military, to peaceful days with John. And now, after facing death so closely, I felt I could no longer live indifferently, as if every day was guaranteed. One morning, I decided to neatly store away the medication bags, blood pressure logs, and everything that reminded me of illness on a shelf. I did not deny these were part of my new life, but I did not want to define myself by disease. I was still Martha Henderson, a woman who loved to garden, cook, and tell stories to her grandchildren. I began calling old friends, those I hadn't spoken to for years because of family obligations. We agreed to meet at a little cafe on the corner of Main Street, where the oatmeal cookies were soft and the chamomile tea fragrant. When I saw Gloria, my best friend from high school, I couldn't hold back the tears. We hugged for a long time, our silver hair touching, and in that moment, I felt the strength of a friendship that had lasted over 60 years. "Martha, you still look as radiant as ever," Gloria said, squeezing my hands. "You've always been the strongest one among us." We sat for hours, sharing stories about our children, the passing years, the friends we'd lost. Then Gloria asked me a question that stayed with me. "Is there anything you still want to do before we're not around anymore?" That question changed how I looked at my remaining days. I started making a list of things I wanted to do, not something grand like touring the world or skydiving, but the sincere, simple wishes of someone who'd been through so much. I wanted to teach my grandkids to bake apple pie using my mother's recipe. I wanted to write letters to each of my children, sharing what I cherished about them. I wanted to plant a white climbing rose beside the living room window, just like the one John had planted when we first moved here. I wanted to record stories about my grandparents so the grandchildren would know their roots. And I began doing each thing, one by one. Every Saturday, I invited Sam and Grace over to teach them how to knead dough, cut apples, and bake pies. We'd get flour everywhere, laugh together, and I'd tell them about my childhood when my own grandmother taught me to bake like this. When we pulled that first apple pie from the oven, its familiar aroma filled the small kitchen, and I felt a pure happiness. I was passing on something precious, something that would last even after I was gone. I started writing letters to each of my children, describing the day I gave birth to them, what it felt like to hold them for the first time, my pride in seeing them grow and overcome hardship. I wrote things I'd never said out loud, my gratitude when Ben cared for John in his final days, my pride in Emily's strength as a single mother, my love for Becca even when we disagreed. "You are the greatest gift of my life," I wrote in Emily's letter. "I may not have much time left, but I want you to know, every time I see you facing life bravely, I feel truly proud and lucky." I planted the white rose by the window, as planned. Ben helped me dig the soil and set the plant, as I showed him how to fertilize and water it. We worked in comfortable silence, sometimes sharing memories of John. When we finished, Ben put his arm around me, looking at the small rose in the sunlight. "Dad would have loved this," Ben said. "He always wanted a rose by this window." "I know," I nodded, "that's why I wanted to plant it." In the evenings, I'd sit by the window with a tape recorder, telling stories about my grandparents, about childhood in the Missouri countryside, about living through the Great Depression and World War II. I spoke of my grandmother washing clothes by hand in a wooden tub, of hot summer nights sleeping on the porch, of the excitement when our home first got electricity and radio. "The kids need to know where they come from," I told Emily as I handed her the tapes. "To understand things weren't always as easy as they are now, and that some things are more important than smartphones." Time went by, and I gradually completed my list. Each finished item brought a satisfied smile and a silent prayer of thanks for the opportunity to do it. I joined a support group at the local hospital, where survivors of heart attacks shared experiences and encouraged each other. There, I told my story, how I faced my fears and found joy again. "Grandma Martha gave me hope," said a 62-year-old man who'd just had heart surgery. "If she could do it at 76, I can too." I never imagined that at this age I could still inspire others. But perhaps that's the gift my heart attack brought me, the ability to see every day as a miracle, and the courage to share my story with those who need it. Autumn in Missouri always brings a special beauty. The leaves glow red, gold, and deep orange, like a vast painting spread across the streets. And this year, my first autumn after the heart attack, I welcomed it with more gratitude than ever before. 6 months had passed since that fateful day, and I'd made progress that even Dr. Gibson found surprising. "Mrs. Henderson, your heart rhythm is steadier than many of my younger patients," he said during my September checkup, and I felt a surge of pride. This morning, waking up and looking through the window, I saw the maple tree in front had turned a brilliant red. I put on a warm sweater, wrapped the scarf John had given me years ago, and stepped onto the porch. The autumn air was cool and crisp, carrying the sweet scent of dried leaves and damp earth. In my small garden, the last yellow chrysanthemums of the season still bloomed defiantly, as if trying to hold on to summer a little longer. Today was special. Ben was picking me up to take me to Emily's house for Sam's 10th birthday party, my eldest grandchild. Last year, I had driven myself, but after the heart attack, I agreed to let my children handle the transportation, not because I couldn't drive, but because it reassured them. "The kids will be so excited to see you," Ben said as he picked me up. "They say no birthday party is complete without Grandma Martha's apple pie." I smiled, patting the pie box on my lap, a pie that Sam and I had made together the week before, with a little family secret I'd taught him, a pinch of cinnamon added to the crust. On the way, we drove through familiar streets where maple and oak leaves covered the sidewalks. I remembered last autumn, when John and I still walked together under the trees, hand in hand. I recalled how he always stopped to pick up the most beautiful leaves for me, saying, "Martha, look, isn't this the same color as your hair when you were young?" "Are you okay, Mom?" Ben asked, perhaps noticing my distant gaze. "Yes, I'm fine," I nodded, smiling. "I was just thinking how beautiful this autumn is." When we arrived, Emily's house was already bustling with children's laughter. Colorful balloons were tied to the gate, and a large sign read, "Happy 10th birthday, Sam." As soon as I stepped out of the car, Sam ran over and hugged me. "Grandma! You made it!" she exclaimed, her blue eyes bright with joy. "I thought you might not come because of the heart thing." "Sam!" Emily frowned, probably not wanting anyone to mention my condition. "It's okay," I laughed, patting Sam's head. "Grandma is fine, and I wouldn't miss your birthday for the world." I didn't miss Sam's birthday. I watched the children running across Emily's front yard, laughing under the bright red maple trees. I found myself surrounded by 3 generations, my children, in-laws, and grandchildren, each a piece of my memory and future. At that small party, I quietly observed and realized, these moments were so precious, especially after my heart had stopped beating then bravely started again. When the birthday song rang out, everyone turned to me, and Emily whispered, "We're all grateful you recovered." My eyes welled up, because just months ago, I feared not seeing this day. Then I slowly told the children about their grandmother's heart journey, about the day it suddenly stopped, about the doctors who did everything possible in that cold emergency room, about my will to return to the family, and the miracle of life. I didn't embellish, just honestly said there were days when I was very afraid and weak, but I thought of everyone's love to overcome. Ben, Emily, and Becca sat quietly listening. Sam came closer, holding my hand tightly, whispering, "Grandma will always be the bravest." I smiled, tears flowing down my cheeks, warm and relieving as if washing away all pain. It was the first time since that event that I felt my heart was truly healed, not just by medicine but by love and reunion. After Sam's birthday, I promised myself to live each day fully. As my health stabilized, I actively rejoined small family activities. I helped Emily pick up the grandchildren after school, watered flowers with Becca, taught Grace and Jack to count using corn kernels. I realized, I could still be an important part of this extended family despite old age and the lingering scars of a heart attack. Friends from church learned of my recovery and visited, bringing flowers, cookies, and encouragement cards. I rejoined community activities with my doctor's encouragement. Despite having been through a crisis, once health stabilizes, social activities are not only necessary but help the elderly become more optimistic and enjoy life more. I also registered for the retirement club in the city center. Twice a week, I'd go there to hear other elderly tell old stories, play chess, join gentle yoga classes, and organize small parties. I volunteered to share about heart attack symptoms, home first aid, and encouraged members to monitor blood pressure, eat healthily, and maintain appropriate exercise, as I was living proof of the power of persistent recovery. Some afternoons, I'd sit alone on the wooden bench in the garden where John and I used to watch sunsets for years. I'd close my eyes, listening to my heartbeat, sometimes still skipping a beat but no longer frightening. I remembered the hospital days, the ticking machines, the feeling of part of my body being left to fate. Then I recalled the moment I woke up, when Becca called, "Mom," when the doctor said, "Mrs. Martha, you made it." Years before, I thought death would come quietly like a breeze. But it turned out, life was stronger than I imagined. I had read somewhere about people reviving after their hearts stopped. They called it a medical miracle. I thought more simply, it was the wonder of family love, the will to stay, the dedication of doctors, and a bit of luck too. When you live again from the boundary of life and death, every breath is a gift. After each checkup, the doctor encouraged me to continue exercising, eating properly, maintaining a cheerful mood, and sharing more with society. My children and grandchildren were always there, reminding me to take medicine, check blood pressure, and especially not to forget to love myself. My health improved daily, and sometimes I even forgot I had once been on the other side of life. At the end of that winter, the church organized a gathering on overcoming adversity in twilight years. They invited me to share my story with the community. I stood on the small church platform, looking down at familiar silver-haired heads, carrying eyes full of love. I described the feeling of my chest being squeezed, the moment all light went out, and the call back from the brink. I spoke about the nurse's hand on my chest, the electric shocks that saved me, and the anxious faces of my children as I woke up. I didn't hide my fear, but I also didn't hide my hope. I spoke about my shaky first walks, my first apple pie after returning home, and the small joy of seeing another sunrise. No matter your age, even if your heart stops for a moment, it can beat strongly again because of love, I said clearly before the congregation. After my heart attack, I realized that what kept me here was not just the doctor's hands or medicine, but the longing in my grandchildren's eyes, the encouragement of friends, and the memories of those I love. Each of us, as long as we hold those things in our heart, will always have a reason to keep living and to live better. After my talk, many people came to share their own fears and sorrow, once hidden behind illness and loss. I listened to every story, laughed with them, comforted them when they cried, and encouraged them to join the hospital's cardiac rehab programs. I told them about my first terribly anxious days, wanting to give up because I thought I had no more strength, about feeling weak and easily discouraged, but how I overcame these by sharing honestly with my family, receiving psychological support from a therapist, and learning to care for my spirit, because healing a heart isn't just physical activity, but emotional recovery too. I explained to friends the value of regular exercise. No need for heavy workouts or lifting weights that strain the heart, just patiently adding a minute each day to walks, eating healthily, keeping a steady weight, cutting salt and bad fats, quitting cigarettes, keeping a calm mind, loving life, and, above all, not ignoring any sign of heart trouble. Many said I inspired them. If a 76-year-old grandmother who once flatlined could return to her garden, her grandchildren, and her church, then they, too, could find the courage to try. As a new spring arrived in Missouri, I once again shared simple joys with my grandchildren, planting tulips, joining art classes, going on outdoor picnics, and, always, keeping up my 20-minute daily walk. I no longer set lofty goals, merely hoping to wake up each day, hear birdsong, and enjoy the old paths on steady legs. Each morning, I rose early, did a few light moves on the porch, and inhaled deeply. I checked my blood pressure, took my medication on schedule, ate breakfast, salad, yogurt, or oatmeal. My children were reassured to see I was taking care of myself, not just my health, but also keeping a bright and happy spirit. Every few days, I called my friends, encouraging each other to keep exercising and sharing little tips to overcome the lingering fears and worries that remain after a heart attack. I allowed myself moments of weakness, days missing John, nights when the weather changed and my joints ached. But I no longer hid from these feelings. I faced them, talked to my family, friends, and my doctor when needed, so that sadness wouldn't become a shadow over my life. A year after that fateful cardiac arrest, I hosted a small garden party, inviting neighbors, friends, and all my grandchildren. I stood before them and recounted my story once more, now with deep pride. This time has taught me that weakness is not the end, but the start of new strength. We can fall, our hearts may stop for a time, but if we have love and the will to live, we can get back up, live on, and inspire others. My grandchildren hugged me, eager to know what it felt like to almost die. I laughed and told them that their grandmother now cherishes every minute, every second with family and friends more than ever. Ben, my son, gave me a big hug and whispered, "You're the motivation for our whole family, Mom, you know that?" I could feel my heartbeat, steady and warm in my chest, grateful for the simplest things in life. Epilogue, when the heart beats again. If you ask me the greatest lesson I learned, it's that a weak heart can recover, a broken spirit can rise again, if you never give up hope. Share true feelings, fear, sadness, joy, with your loved ones to find peace. Be patient, exercise, eat healthily, and cling to every glimmer of hope on the road to healing. Above all, live every day fully, because every beat of a revived heart is a miracle. I'm no longer afraid of death. I only fear not having enough time to love, to pass on to my children, grandchildren, and fellow elders the belief that even a heart that has stopped can start again, stronger and brighter than ever. But the hardest part was not the physical or memory changes, but the hidden fear that my heart might stop beating again. Every time I woke suddenly at night, felt my heart race, or even when a small pain appeared in my chest, I couldn't help my anxiety. Dr. Gibson explained this was a normal psychological reaction for those who'd survived cardiac arrest. I knew that nearly 9 in 10 cardiac arrest survivors suffer some degree of brain injury due to lack of oxygen, leading to behavioral and daily function changes. Compared to many, I was already very lucky to face just minor memory and concentration issues. Mrs. Martha, survival rate drops about 10% for every minute without CPR, the doctor once told me. Your neighbor's quick call for help saved your life. I spoke with a psychologist to deal with these fears. She taught me deep breathing exercises, how to recognize anxiety signs and distinguish them from real cardiac trouble. I learned to live in the present, not to worry too much about the future or what might happen. A year and a half after I came back from cardiac arrest, I decided to throw a special celebration. I called it Rebirth Day, and invited everyone who helped save me. Present at the party were the medical staff who revived me, the neighbor who called for help, family, friends, and fellow patients I met during treatment. I prepared a short speech, reading from notes to be sure I wouldn't forget the important things. I have learned that cardiac arrest is not just a medical event, but a spiritual journey, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. I have seen the fragile border between life and death. I have felt the value of every moment, every breath, every hand held. I have learned that every day is a gift, and I want to live each gift to the fullest. I thanked everyone, from Dr. Gibson to Nurse Linda, from the kind neighbor to my children who always stayed by my side. I thanked them not just for saving my life, but for giving me a new, more meaningful one. Looking into each person's eyes, I saw emotion, joy, and something deeper, a connection between those who had fought death together. Dr. Gibson stepped forward, hugged me and whispered, "We just did our job, Mrs. Martha. You're the one who chose to live. You're the one who didn't give up." At 78, 2 years after my heart attack, I had learned that age is just a number. I joined gentle yoga classes at the community center twice a week, where I met new friends also on their own health recovery journeys. We shared experiences, encouraged each small step, and laughed together at the challenges of aging. I still took my medication regularly, checked my blood pressure daily, and monitored my heart rate. But I no longer saw it as a burden. It had become a habit, like brushing teeth in the morning or reading before bed. I had learned to live with it, not letting it define me. I also participated in a study on cardiac arrest survivors at the University of Missouri. Researchers tracked my health, cognitive abilities, and quality of life over time. I felt proud knowing my story might help medicine, might help save others in the future. On my 79th birthday, I decided to host a small party for family and close friends. Under the soft light of a spring afternoon, everyone gathered in my small garden. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice a little choked with emotion. 3 years ago, I didn't think I would be standing here, among those I love, welcoming my 79th year. But here I am, still living, still loving, still learning and cherishing every moment. I looked into the eyes of each person, children, grandchildren, friends, and saw love, respect, and joy. I realized I had made a mark in their lives, that my survival story had become an inspiration and strength for everyone. Sam, now a 13-year-old teenager, stood up and said, "Grandma, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. I want to save people the way they saved you." I couldn't hold back tears. That was perhaps the most meaningful birthday gift I had ever received. Looking back on my journey, I realized that a heart attack is not just a medical event, it is a lesson about life, about human strength, about love and connection. I learned that fear is natural, but courage is a choice. Each day, when I choose to get up, walk around the garden, cook for my family, or simply smile at a stranger on the street, I choose to live bravely, not letting fear dictate my life. I learned that weakness is not shameful, but an opportunity to accept help, to connect with others. When I let my children care for me, when I shared worries with my doctor, when I accepted encouragement from friends, I learned to trust in the goodness of others. And above all, I learned that every heartbeat, whether weak, trembling, or strong, is a reminder that life is precious. I once asked my doctor, "Is there anything else I should worry about with my heart?" He smiled, "The best thing you can do is continue living healthily, maintain regular physical activity, eat well, and keep a positive outlook." I remembered his words with gratitude, recognizing that survival after cardiac arrest is only truly possible with prompt response, correct action, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle in the long term. I taught my grandchildren the signs of cardiac arrest: no breathing, no movement, no detectable pulse, and told them, if this ever happens to anyone in our family, call for help immediately, start chest compressions right away. Don't let fear make you delay. Every minute lost is a percentage of hope gone. I also encouraged my family and elderly friends to take CPR training at the community health center. I explained, CPR can double, even triple, the chance of survival for someone in cardiac arrest, if we don't hesitate to act early. 3 years, then 4 years passed since that fateful day. I was no longer Martha who had a cardiac arrest, I was Martha, the woman who still tended tulips every morning, reminded grandchildren to wear shoes before going outside, and smiled despite knowing how fragile life can be. I no longer feared the occasional sharp pain. Instead of worrying, I learned to identify symptoms, calmly ask for help, and always keep my phone nearby. I still followed all the doctor's advice: low-salt diet, no tobacco, limited alcohol, keeping a calm mind, and regular exercise. I joined dance classes for the elderly, walked in the park with friends, sharing simple stories that I never had time to fully appreciate before. For me, a heart that once went silent is a reminder to live slower, deeper, so that each passing day, though ordinary, though nothing special, still sparkles with meaning. If someday I'm no longer here, I want my children, grandchildren, friends, and anyone who has heard my story to understand: you may fear things beyond your control, fear death, illness, or a heart that skips a beat. But the most important thing is not fear, but finding motivation to live each day. I once lay there, between light and darkness, trembling and waiting for a miracle. That miracle didn't come from anywhere distant. It was right there in the hands holding mine, in loving looks, in the silent heartbeat whispering the song of life. I am Martha Louise Henderson. I have walked through death, and returned to live again. As long as you have eyes to see the sunrise, legs to stand up, breath to speak words of love, live fully. If your heart is weak, let it rest, and it will become strong again. And perhaps, like me, you'll find that each heartbeat is a reminder of life's wondrous power. Each of us can be a miraculous story. No matter where you are, how old you are, or how strong your heart is, never stop hoping, never stop loving, never miss the chance to live each day meaningfully for your loved ones and yourself. And that's my story, when the heart stopped beating and started again. A miracle, a journey, a new beginning, never too late to begin.